Welcome back to Pint podcast, and today we are joined by Steve Guinan, ex-Hereford. Oh God, he's played for so many teams, I can't name them all, but here we go. Let's get into starting your career out at Nottingham Forest, making 7 appearances and 4 being in the Premier League. What was that like for you, making sort of your debut and putting that football shirt on for the first time?
Bit of a dream come true, isn't it? I suppose it's every boy's sort of aspiration and dream to make it as a footballer, and you know the chances of that actually coming to fruition are few and far between. So for it actually to come true and put on the shirt and everything else that sort of went into it was, it was sort of a jolt out of the blue, and I think it was more so because I didn't expect it. Although I'd had a couple of good months and I was always in the frame, and I travelled to some games and was part of the squad. I'd never actually been named on the bench. So the first time I was actually at my debut, which was away at Wimbledon, I remember sitting in the hotel at, I don't know, it must have been 1 o'clock in London, and Frank Clark was a manager, and what he'd do is, we'd have a flick chart, he'd turn off the opening page and the cover, and the team was always wrote on, and I went in, and when he flipped it over, I was, one of those, oh God, I hope I'm on the bench this time, or sub not you, sitting in the stand and having a pie. And I was in the starting lineup, and it was almost like, oh Jesus, didn't expect it. I hadn't told the family, I hadn't given anyone any prior sort of knowledge because I didn't know. So, and it was away at Wimbledon, of all places, away at Wimbledon to make your debut. So a little bit surreal, if I'm honest, but one of those boyhood dreams that came true.
That's ironic that you mentioned that. The guest that we've just recorded prior to you, Steve, were Warren Barton, so he might well have been playing in the Crazy Gang team. He was just telling us their entire battle plan was just to, the first battle was in the tunnel, intimidate the team, get them scared. So I can imagine, like you say, coming up against the likes of Vinnie Jones, Marcus Gale, who else was listed then, I suppose? John Fashanu, yeah. What was that like then? It's already a scary moment, but against a team like that.
Yeah, I mean, Vinnie Jones definitely played, because I the funny story was I actually nutmegged him and ran around the other side, and I think he shouted some expletive that was 4 letters long, so I'm not going to reveal it on here, and chased after me. So I quickly got rid of the ball as soon as I could, because I knew I'd be hacked down. But probably not as daunting as what Wimbledon were like in the heyday. This was probably a good few years after. But to be honest, Marcus Gale played. Vinnie Jones, definitely Warren Barton played, and probably did them a disservice really, because they could actually play a little bit, and then they were starting to introduce some good players into the side. So yes, a little bit daunting. It was at Sellers Park, because they were sharing the ground back then, so it wasn't at Plough Lane. And probably, it's one of those sort of professional moments as such, where it was like, Christ, I'm lining up in the tunnel out of these. And, you forget in that particular team at Forest who we had, there was Stuart Pearce was in that, Pierre Van Hooydonk was in that a few years later. And there were some unbelievable players, but very quickly you have to switch from, even what I am now is a football fan at heart, just still a football person, to, Christ, I've actually got a job to do and go out on the pitch and be as professional as possible. But it still is a little bit, even in the back end of my career, you still got to make those moments count and be special and live long in the memory. So every now and again you do sort of catch yourself sort of looking around and, bloody hell, this is amazing, so you still got to make those opportunities count.
Yeah. Who's it you support, Steve? I know you're from sort of Birmingham, but have you got a team that you follow closely? Or
out of anyone, it'd probably be Villa.
Really? Doing very well.
Yeah, well, it makes a change, doesn't it, in the last few years? But but it's one of those boyhood things. My dad's a Villa fan, father-in-law's a Villa fan, brother's a Villa fan, and it's just sort of ingrained in us. And I think that was the first ever game I went to watch. I think my dad took me when I was about 4 with my brother. We went to watch Villa West Brom, and always kept an eye on the results. And thankfully, it's nice to see him doing pretty well for a change in recent years. Yeah,
I'm going to say.
The barren time, it's nice for him to have this run. Some cracking players they've got. That midfield, sort of midfield three, McGinn, Grealish, and Barkley. I think they give anyone a run for money in Premier League, to be honest.
Yeah, I think perhaps it's. I wouldn't say it's a little surprising, and I think probably behind their sort of closed doors, they probably expected them to do quite well. That's definitely what I'd be saying if I was in charge. But after surviving at the last day of the season, I don't think anyone had expected them to do so well. And I think I've been in at Villa a few times down the last couple of years, and there has been a really good atmosphere there, a good camp. I think you think about what Dean Smith's had to go through at the start of last season, and to buy that many players, and fair play to the board for backing them. But, there's very limited chances that you're going to spend 100 million plus or whatever it was, and all those players are going to gel and be a success in the first season. And I think, Barkley's been a massive signing for Villa, but, there's been one or two more with Traore coming in and obviously Marley Watkins, but there hasn't been too many additions this summer apart from the goalkeeper. I think some key positions has added a little bit of stability to the side, but hopefully it's one of those cases where it's all clicked into place.
Yeah, they look very, very good at the minute.
Yeah, they do.
But right, so I'll move on. So from Nottingham Forest, you had quite a few loan spells away that you never really got settled anywhere until sort of Hereford, Cheltenham, where you was there for sort of a few seasons. Was it sort of your decision to keep moving out on loan, or, as well as the side question, how difficult is it for a player to really settle in somewhere?
Okay, answer the first question. A bit of both. Probably more often than not, there wasn't a choice. It was you going. It was one of them. I had, in my 2-year scholarship window, or old-fashioned apprentice, what it was then, I'd spent a large period of it injured, and probably one of the best loan spells I had, only for purely location, was I went to play in America for 3 months, which was brilliant. And I'd had a good first year, an okay second year, but I'd done enough to earn myself a contract. But I was injured for a lot of that time. And when our season sort of goes into downtime and it finishes, they'd got a contact with a guy in America who basically played in a Forest kit. And I think he was one of the director's sons back then. And they said, listen, we play April, May, June. Do you want to come and get fit and then come back firing on all cylinders? I was a bit unsure because I was only sort of 18, and I went, yeah, why not? And Robert Rosario, I don't know if you remember Rob, used to play for Norwich and Coventry, and we both went together because he was coming back from a long-term injury. And we had an amazing time for 3 months, and I went to get fit. At the time in my life, I got a fake ID, which meant I could drink at 18. I was out clubbing. I'd got the best car I'd ever had at that age because I only got like a little banger. And it was amazing at the time in my life. But I went to get fit, and I came back about a stone overweight, eating all the burgers and ribs. So, although it was an amazing time, definitely not what it's intended for. And some of the other loan spells, they weren't successful. I remember Plymouth as a standout one, which was. But, I say now some advice to young footballers, where if you're not playing, don't settle for playing in the reserves. There's nothing better than going and playing out in front of a crowd, whether it's one man on his dog, whether it's 500, 5,000. That's the game. You've got to go and play where it actually means something to get 3 points. And I tell this story now. My first loan spell, actually, before I made my debut at Forest, I went to Darlington. And that was definitely not a choice. And it was over Christmas period. So, totally bizarre to me at that point. You were, training Christmas Day, playing Boxing Day, and it was really intense, the games. And I scored on my debut at Feetham's. I think it was home to Torquay, I think it was. And anyway, to cut a long story short, I think I missed a sitter in the last minute to win it 2-1. And I wasn't too bothered. Not that I wasn't bothered. That's probably the wrong thing to say. But because it was my Football League debut I'd scored, I was caught up in the euphoria of, bloody hell, I've scored,
Yeah.
And I got in the dressing room, and the captain pinned me up against the wall. And he just went, you've just cost me my win bonus, and the win bonus means I can take the missus out for a meal. And he sort of flung me across the dressing room. And that was a sort of light bulb moment. I thought, oh, Christ, that's what it means on a Saturday, where playing in the reserves, it's more about development. Don't really matter if you miss. And I think, there was loads of moments like that in the loan spells where I started to get a grasp of what the lower league football world meant. So all for different reasons, even the most unsuccessful ones, all were valuable and had their own little story to tell. So, and it is difficult, your second part, it's not easy because sometimes you're dumped in a hotel, and, let's be honest, the hotels at League Two, they're not fantastic. You're not staying in Hyatts or Hiltons. You're pretty much staying in a B&B. if you're not sharing with a family or something like that. So that's an unusual situation to get used to. You're away from either family or girlfriends or friends, which is something else that no one really seems. And, you know, it's not like it is now where managers and coaches really look into the individual playing styles. Will they fit into our system? Quite often back then, it was a phone call to a mate of a mate. We need a centre forward. If you got one, yeah, great, we'll have him.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't even fit into their system. And I remember, you know, I'd be at Forest, which was like a Man City or a Liverpool side back then. They tried to play good football, nowhere near as good, by the way, but they tried to play. And I was going into League Two, and it was just being bombed forward at 90 mile an hour, and I'd get some 6'5" giant just elbowing me, kicking at me, spitting at me off the ball. I'm like, what bloody hell's going on here? And somehow you're either sink or swim, don't you? You've just got to learn to adapt.
What you just said there is almost word for word what a guest we had on 2 weeks ago, Tommy Lee, the goalkeeper at Chesterfield.
Yeah, I know he is, yeah.
And yeah, he said the exact same as you there. Obviously, he was in Manchester United's academy, went out on a few loans, and he said, you don't really care in reserve football to put too fine a point on it, as long as you're playing well and impressing. And then, like you've just said there, you suddenly go into a man's world, you win bonus, goal bonus, clean sheet bonus for, you know, like these lower league players is vital to, you know, paying the mortgage in some cases. So that really hit home, you know, 2 people in a row to say that. You just don't really think of that pressure that young players are going into that environment. It must be quite alien, I suppose, after not being pampered, but certainly not being accustomed to that before you go there. That's a really interesting aspect I never thought of before we started doing these.
I think probably the situation's even worse. I think, you know, back then, as a first year pro, second year pro, whatever it was, I wasn't paid a great deal of money at Nottingham Forest, where now if you were a second or a first year pro at, you know, a Premier League side, you're probably on, you know, vast amounts of money now. That, you know, that tide has definitely sort of turned. So, you know, does that really hit home? Would you be really bothered? Because you go on loan now, I don't think you'd relatively give 2 hoots, because within a couple of years, you're probably going to be settled for life. Where back then, I was always on a 1 or 2 year contract. I've never had anything longer than that. And definitely, you know, people have mortgages to pay. I've seen it firsthand, and I've witnessed that myself and been on the other side of it, where if I don't, you're literally playing year to year to get the next contract. So people don't see that part of it at all now.
Just
sorry, Luke.
I was just going to say one more point I wanted to touch on with Steve, just on a personal note. As a Burnley fan, you're the first ex-Burnley player we've had on the podcast. What was that like? If I'm right, looking at the era you were there, was it the Chris Waddle season or Adrian Heath? Adrian Heath. So what kind, just, this is personal to me, sorry Josh and Nick. What was it like then for you at Burnley? What was the experience like? Were any standout memories or any players that you, you know, grew a good relationship with, that type of thing?
To be honest, it was a waste of time. And
I'm so happy you said that.
I'll be honest, yeah.
It was, and it's nothing detrimental to Burnley. I loved. You know, it was one of those things where I really enjoyed my time there, because there were some players there that were brilliant. We connected. We had a great time. I stayed in an okay hotel. I don't know what the hotel was, but it was pretty decent for Burnley. But the football, and that's what I went for, was a waste of time, and I got stitched up. So this is one of them loan spells that, you know, didn't happen their way, or as I thought it would pan out, where Forest went, right, Burnley have been on the phone, they wanted to go on loan. I went, okay, I had a chat with Adrian Heath on the phone before I went. Yeah, brilliant, you'll come straight into the side. You know, we need someone like you, a bit of a target man. I was like, okay, because I'm going to get some first team football. I went up there, trained on the Thursday. On the Friday, he named the team. I wasn't in it. So I went to see him and I said, just out of interest, what's happening? Because he went, oh yeah, he said, to be honest, you're just going to be back up for the month, so you'll hardly play it all. And I just thought, well, and you can't, you know, it's not like it is now where you could go back. So I think it was the old-fashioned deadline day. So the last of the 6 weeks was just a write-off. I knew no matter how I played or performed, I wouldn't play. And to be fair, you know, look on the other side of it now, a little bit older, and in hindsight, they've got Paul Barnes at that point who was scoring goals for fun. They had Andy Cook who was scoring goals for fun. But as a relative young footballer, I never did any due diligence or research. I didn't even look and think, well, why am I coming in if he's got 2 good centre forwards? So from Adrian Heath's point now, looking further back, yeah, he did stitch me up. There's no getting away from that fact. But I can also understand why I didn't play, and perhaps I should have done my homework a little bit and actually said, no, this isn't the club for me at this moment in time. But looking back, yeah, absolute waste of time. And I think there's a clip of me on Sky Sports who one of the bloopers of the season. Remember Kanu for Arsenal at West Brom when he was on the line and we got it over? Mine's almost as bad as that. Almost. Somehow I absolutely got it over the bar from about half a yard, and I don't know how I did it.
Well, we're not going to dig that out, Steve. You didn't have to admit that. We'd have never said it. One of the loans I wanted to touch on, I think this was Sky Sports reported it as well. So at Scunthorpe,
I know it's coming.
There's a report that Brian Laws relieved you of your tracksuit in the club car park. So what?
You're right.
What's that about?
Great story, isn't it? Great story. There has been a number of occasions where some of my football friends and friends and family said, "You write a book," and it's something I've always considered, but I never got around to. But yeah, spot on. I've never denied that. So again, I was a little bit more mature, and I stood up for myself. So I went. I knew Lawsy a little bit because he's a former Forest player, and actually when I was 14, 15 on trial at Forest as a schoolboy, we went and trained during half term, full terms as it was, and the vivid memory I've got of him, we were joined in what for an affectionate term now is the bomb squad. Those that were nowhere near the first team, there were 5 or 6, and we trained with them at 14, 15, and Lawsy absolutely smashed me to smithereens. The hardest tackle I think I've ever faced as a kid. And I thought, my God, what's he doing? I'm only a schoolboy. But I'd got a little bit of knowledge of who he was, former Forest player. I used to see him around Nottingham occasionally, and he'd actually done pretty well for Scunthorpe. And he was the same. Listen, you'll come up straight into the side. I thought, great. I'd got a couple of friends who were playing there, Justin Walker, Lee Marshall as well. So they were in no doubt, yeah, you are going to play. And on my debut, we played Bristol City. I'd scored on my debut. I think we lost 2-1 in the end. I had a decent game the next game. I can't remember what the score was because you could only sign month to month. And then the next game, we were due to play away at Burnley. I can remember it. And we'd got, I think it was Guy Pua. And he
always score against us, him.
Yeah, he was okay. And I crossed paths with him a lot of time during the tail end of my career. And Lawsy pulled me off. He said, I'm not... And he was live on TV as well. I was devastated. Live on TV away at Burnley. He went, I'm changing the system. I'm going 4-5-1 and I'm playing Guy up front. And I went, you've killed... I said, I've come on loan to play 4 or 5 games. I said, I scored on my debut. I played well the next game. So I've got a 1-in-2 ratio and you're bombing me for the next game live on TV. And he went, well, that's it. You are. So I didn't play. The 4th game, I can't remember whether I played or whether I didn't, to be honest. And then he asked me, he said, right, you're going to stay alone in a second month? And I went, you're having a laugh? I said, absolutely no chance. I said, I'd have played more games in the reserves at Forest. And by the way, I had other opportunities to go elsewhere on loan. I think that was in League One at the time. And this was in the office. And I was dressed in the tracksuit. I think we got a reserve game. So I said, well, there's no point in me playing in a game because I ain't staying. And he went, fair enough then. And he went, well, give me a tracksuit back. And I went, I've literally got a T-shirt on and my pants on. And I can't remember what he said. I don't care. I went, I had no problem off me. I got the lads who we used to car share, the lads from Nottingham. So I just stripped off, chucked in a tracksuit. I went, all right, I'll see you later. And that was it. So bizarre. I think I sat in the back of my mate's car in pants and a T-shirt. That was it, going back.
Just imagine you walking out there in your shirt and your boxers at a manager's office going, right, see you later, cheers, mate.
Yeah, bizarre. Some of the things that go unseen and unheard of in football clubs. But yeah, that's 100% true, yeah.
Brilliant. Wow. So when you moved on, you did leave Forest, you had a couple of spells, and then you found yourself at Cheltenham. League Two playoff final, I think I'm right in saying, Millennium Stadium in front of 30,000 people, and Steve Guinan pops up with a winner. What was that like?
Yeah, pretty special in all honesty. Got to say the goal doesn't, live long in the memory of being a classic.
Again, we weren't going to mention it, Steve.
Oh no. Listen, I'm too old and too mature to claim that still. And I didn't on the day. I think I remember straight on the interview on Sky. I went, it was a cross up the thing for the far post. So, but listen, from my perspective, you can't take that away from me. It's you score a winning goal in a playoff final, whatever level, or any cup final. it's a goal and your name's there down in the history books, isn't it? So, and it was pretty special. I think my dad, my brother had a load of friends that came. Obviously, my wife came. My lad, who's now 16, was too small to come. And obviously, it's one of those things that you just replay even now sometimes, over in your mind. And I've got the DVD and everything else. So, yeah, brilliant story, because I think Cheltenham, when, expected to be nowhere near the playoffs, never alone, get promoted, and sort of a David versus Goliath with some teams in that league. But, we had some particularly good players in that squad at the time. John Finnegan, Grant McCann, Damien Spencer, KODJ. We had some really good players, Craig Armstrong, and we did it. We got over the line on the final day of the season, and probably, dare I say, I think Grimsby were probably the better team on the day as well. But we took a lead, clung on to it. And, as far as Cheltenham are concerned, my son's actually playing there now at 16. He's a first-year scholar, but, League One's the highest they've ever been to on a couple of occasions now. But, yeah, really special, great day. Lots of alcohol consumed that night, without a doubt.
I can imagine.
So from all the places that you've played at then, Steve, has there ever been a manager that's really taken care of you, took you under his wing and sort of stood out from above the rest?
Yeah, I've had this question a few times, and
Still been absolute arseholes.
No, well, yeah. You think at Forest, my first year as an apprenticeship was Brian Clough, which was a privilege to be around and to see him working, but B, that was when he was, dare I say, on his downward spiral, which was a pity, and they got relegated out of the Premier League, and he wasn't in his greatest hour, but still a privilege to be around. Frank Clark came in, and then we had, a number of managers. Ron Atkinson, David Platt took over, Stuart Pearce took over, Dave Bassett. We had some real, what were then high-profile figures, and they've all got strengths and weaknesses, but I don't think anyone's really taken care of me until... I don't think anyone has taken care of me, full stop, but the only ones that have actually thought, do you know what, you actually do consider what the player's like off the pitch, and it's probably John Ward at Cheltenham, who was the manager when we got promoted, and Keith Downing, his assistant, and then probably Graham Turner at Hereford, and they were for totally different reasons, where John and Keith were good people, good managers and coaches, and would always ask around how the family was, etc. And Graham, because he just didn't overcomplicate things, he just made things simple, and he'd just say, at my age then, he would just say, listen, this is what you're good at, this is what you're not. Just do what you're good at, or at least try to do it. Don't mess around doing anything else. And, other managers would ask you to play particular ways and try and do this. And, you go into a game with, it's like a maths test, you'd have all these things fizzing around. Well, I've got to do this, I've got to worry about him. And where Graham was just like, do this, do that. And if you do that well, you're playing the team every week. And, I had my most successful scoring spell, 100% at Hereford in both spells and a loan spell. So maybe that was what I needed, just some simple 1 or 2 or 3 word things to say, do that and don't worry about anything else, and we'll get the ball to you. Where at times, and I see it now with coaches and managers who I work with, they think their game, has got to be revitalised, totally modified. And I saw, was it Ancelotti the other week when he was interviewed after the Everton game, and he went, it's not a difficult game. There's 11 players on the pitch. You play one way, and you've either got the ball or you haven't. And I'm like, well, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot more aspects to it than that, but would you say, what everything that you think about as a manager or coach to player? I definitely would nowadays. That's all.
You mentioned there, Steve, about John Ward. I just wondered, because he was, if I'm right, I'm thinking in my head I'm right, he was assistant to Adrian Heath at Burnley. Did he have a role? Did that come to mind when he went to Cheltenham then? Was he the manager that signed you there? Or if he remembered you from that loan spell perhaps, or something like that?
To be honest, I didn't even know. You just told me something that I never knew. I didn't know Ward was assistant then.
Yeah.
Was he really?
Yeah, but there's always been, he left, I want to say about March that season, because Burnley, the Adrian Heath season, we were only manager for 1 season. Yeah. We were in the playoff places, and then John Ward left to become a manager somewhere, and our form dipped massively, and a lot of people put basically the management of that team down to John Ward rather than Adrian Heath, rightly or wrongly. So
probably coincided with my going there as well, while the form dipped as well. Well, do you know what? That may have been, because I definitely can't remember him being there, to be honest with you. But no, you know, John, very astute manager, still works now for the League Managers Association. And yeah, I can't remember him, but John does tell the story of the lad, John Finnegan, who we mentioned, who was captain of Cheltenham. He was playing for Cheltenham for a number of years before I signed, and he was an apprentice at Forest when I was, and along with Craig Armstrong. So we kept in touch with each other for years and years, and we still do now. And I think I scored 29 in that season for Hereford in the conference. And my mate John kept texting me every week saying, you know, or calling, things are going well, blah blah. I think the gaffer's interested. And as Hereford were in the conference, we had a chance to get promoted out of the playoffs, which we didn't succeed. And John came to watch me in the playoff semi-final, I think, at Aldershot, and he told me a couple of things I did on the pitch, which I still can't remember to this day. But he said he'd seen me play once or twice, but just off the back of that game, he said Cheltenham were quite a young side, and he said he brought me in as an experienced striker. But I think experience was his word, not knowing he was going to get someone that couldn't run. So he had to put up with that for a few years. But no, me and Wardy still talk now. We still have a bit of a giggle, and we see each other every now and again. So yeah, I wouldn't hear a bad word said against him.
Yeah. So initiations are a massive part of sort of football. We see him online. There were a kid at Hull who did a brilliant little song and dance up on a table. But did you have to do any initiations when you moved to new teams, or was that something you never got involved with?
Yeah, no, to be fair, we did, but quite often back then it was just the singing. It was nothing. It was nothing too bad. You know, I've seen some horrific things go on in dressing rooms and in hotels down the years, but perhaps not revolving around initiation ceremonies. Quite often, yeah, you'd have to sing a song. You'd have to stand up on a table in the hotel and give it everything, and which is daunting in itself. But you know, times have changed, and I'm not necessarily. You know, I can see both sides to it, to be honest. Would I want to do it now as a young player? No. And I still wouldn't want to do it now, but it brought you that team spirit and that camaraderie and the fun. And I think there's a part of that still to play in a game. So I got a foot in both camps at the moment. But yeah, so some good initiations, but nothing worse than singing, I promise you.
What was your go-to song then, Steve? Are you going to say the same, Josh?
Do you know what? Ask you to sing it. No, that's a good job, because I assure you, everything will crash. I don't know where I did it, but I can remember singing R. Kelly's "I Believe I Can Fly Somewhere."
Oh yeah, good choice.
I remember I think I had a go at doing the Sugar Hill Gang. You know, the rap song that they do. Yeah. I had a go at doing that once. I didn't have a go-to song, just ever what. Genuinely, I thought, well, R. Kelly, I did think I could actually sing it, so I thought I'd pull that out of the bag. I think the Sugar Hill Gang, I thought, listen, it's going to get a giggle from the lads, so I'll give it a go. So.
Josh with Empire State of Mind, he thinks he can sing it, so.
I can sing Empire State of Mind, and on a Christmas special, I'll do it.
We'll hold you to that. We'll get Steve on to do R. Kelly as well.
You can be my Alicia Keys.
Yeah. So now, Steve, you're in from your Gmail, a senior professional game player to coach lead. So what is that? What's that? What is it you do with that?
Quite a title, isn't it?
Yeah, a mouthful.
Yeah. Basically, I'm a coach developer. So after football, I went into a couple of coaching roles, and then I worked for the Professional Footballers Association as a coach educator. But I left for the FA just under 12 months ago. And basically what I do is work with coaches and managers in the senior game. But the player to coach lead, what it is basically, I'm now leading on an initiative for transitioning professional players that are going into coaching and management. So pretty much I try and work with myself sort of 10 or 15 years ago. So, yeah. You know, any players now at the top end of the game who are thinking, actually, I want to become the next coach or manager, then it's not all my responsibility, but I sort of help them through the process and help them transition into those roles. Yeah,
I imagine that's really quite a fulfilling job as well. Like, you see someone that you work with go on, and yeah, I think that would be a really good job. That.
Yeah, I always wanted to stay in football in some capacity, and you know, when I was really young, sort of 16, 17, 18, I was thinking, well, just sport in general. You know, I didn't know that I'd go on to have a career, but, you know, sort of mid-20s, I knew I'd want to stay in football in some capacity. And I probably did think I may go into coaching management, but for whatever reason, you know, your career path doesn't go where you want. But you're totally right. I found myself in a place now where it's probably more fulfilling than being a coach and a manager, and seeing people develop over a period of time and show them what the other side of the white line is like. Because you can imagine, you know, the amount of players who you come across who think they can instantly turn the hat to being a successful coach and manager, and the stats that actually show the reverse of that.
Yeah.
You know, even if you're a top international player, a whole host of those have failed at the first hurdle. So my job really is to basically get them an understanding of, listen, that you're now starting as a novice. You may have played for 25, 30 years, but you don't know anything from a coaching perspective. So it's not easy. It's not done overnight, but really fulfilling. And I don't think I'd ever go back into that side of the game now in terms of coaching and management. I'm really happy where I am. And it's great. I love the job, yeah.
It sounds like a really important role, I'd say, because, I mean, you're spot on. When you think of top players that have gone into management recently, obviously there will be examples that have, like Frank Lampard doing a great job. So there are examples where the transition seems pretty quick and they've just got that natural charisma, I guess you could say. But not to throw him under a bus, but then you look at people like Gary Neville, totally, sorry Gary if you ever come on, out of his depth, maybe because of the size of the club. But yeah, it seems like a role that, has that always been there, or is it sort of a newer position? Is it?
Yeah, it's new. That's why I left the PFA. Really, I didn't look to leave the PFA, but I became aware of this role, and that's why I left, because I knew that it was going to hopefully play a substantial impact on the future of these current players and that are transitioning into roles. And we've done a whole host of research. We've got external organisations to help us. I've done a lot of research interviewing current head coaches, managers, players that, you know, almost in hindsight and retrospect. Well, I interviewed Gareth Southgate, for example, and I sort of said to him, well, when you first got the job at Middlesbrough at 34 or 33, what did you know? What didn't you know? And he said, I didn't know anything, but he said, I thought I did back then. Yeah. And, you know, you get footballers because of their profile. And I think that, you know, the playing pool, 95% of the playing pool go on to become coaches and managers. Nearly every coach and manager, apart from the odd one or two, have had playing careers. And that, you know, our phrase that I always use is, you don't know what you don't know. And until you get put in that situation, and Gareth admitted a number of times on other media outlets and forums that he didn't really know the way he wanted to play. He had no real understanding of sort of team dynamics and leading departments. And you don't, you know, if you think about footballers, all of a sudden they become a manager. Well, they've been in the dressing room shouting and screaming and running around, but now you're the one giving the orders. You've actually got a manager board. You've got to understand, you know, budgets. You may be the one that's doing the contract negotiating. Have you had any negotiating experience? You know how to handle the media? Do you know how to handle difficult conversations and to drop players? And do you understand the physical side with all the physical stats, the GPS, the data? And quite often they don't. You know, as a player, you just get told, it's pretty much like being in the military, do this, do that time. And as a player, you go, sir, yes, sir. Because they don't want players to think about anything else. And all of a sudden, you're on the other side and you're working 15-hour days compared to 3. And it's a lot to handle. So it's a huge role. But it's really fulfilling, and it's only in its infancy, but hopefully it will be pretty impactful in the future years. Yeah.
Awesome.
That is brilliant.
Josh, I'll let you take us through your Pro 5 quiz.
Yes. So what we do, Steve, with every guest, we ask 5 questions about about your career. And it is.
I think that's the worst possible thing.
To be honest, looking at the questions, I think you've answered about 4 of them just in talking. So I think you'll be all right. But it's named after Tommy Lee because he was the first to get 5 out of 5. So it's the Tommy Lee Pro 5 quiz. I promised him that, and yeah, stuck with it now. So yeah, we'll go with number 1. You scored the winning goal in the League 2 player final for Cheltenham Town against who?
Or Grimsby Town.
Correct.
Nice easy one to start with.
And you scored 2 of Cheltenham's 3 goals in that playoff campaign. So it was promotion all down to you, was it? Or?
You know what? You save the best to the end, don't you? To the last. So just kept storing them up all season long.
Number 2. So we've gone from goals and we're on to red cards now. So you were sent off 4 times in your career. Can you remember who they were against?
Scunthorpe.
Yeah. For Cheltenham.
MK Dons.
MK Dons, yeah.
Fleetwood.
Yes.
Oh, Christ. You took me on the last one.
For Forest Green, this one was.
Yeah, that doesn't make it any easier. Really? Did it get sent off at Forest Green?
You did, yeah.
Ah, give up. No idea.
Wrexham in the 2010-11 season, yeah.
Oh, God,
The Fleetwood red card. Some altercation with Jamie Vardy, I believe, or he got sent off and then you started throwing fists.
Yeah, not my proudest moments.
Was it actually?
Yeah, that is true. It was, yeah, we were promotion favourites that year as well. One of the group that was expected it with Fleetwood, and yeah, Jamie Vardy coming in a ridiculous challenge on our fullback Lee Vaughan, who was one of the best fullbacks in the league. Caught him really late, and typical 22-man brawl happened. Off the back of it. I can just, I was quite old then as well, 35, and I'm not sure it was Jamie Vardy or someone came in the melee, and I remember seeing he was one of Fleetwood players, just come and caught me off the side of the head and caught me a treat. And the red mist just descended, and I just went. It was perhaps the journey up to Fleetwood that didn't help, and I just lost the plot. And I think I definitely went for Jamie Vardy, and I went for a couple of the other players as well.
You're going to come out, you may as well take a few down with you, aren't you?
Well, yeah. I apologise in the dressing room, not that mattered, because we got dicked 4-1 away from home. We had to get back from Fleetwood. It was a midweek game, so we didn't get back until about 2 in the morning. And I got fined a week's wages, so well worth it, yeah.
Brilliant.
A nice bit down by the seaside, then.
Brilliant.
Question 3. You scored 107 league goals in your career. Who did you score the most for? Which team?
Oh, Hereford.
Yes. 63 across 3 spells, 1 which was a loan, which I think you touched on earlier as well. Number 4, after spells at Greensboro Dynamo, which I think is that the American team that you mentioned, yeah. And Darlington. And you've already answered this question. You made your Premier League debut for Nottingham Forest in 1996. A 1-0 defeat against who?
Wimbledon.
Correct. And question 5 on the Tommy Lee Pro 5 quiz. You played under multiple managers in your career, and can you name 5 of them? And we will accept caretakers.
Okay. Frank Clark.
Yes.
Stuart Pearce.
Yeah.
David Platt.
Yeah.
Ron Atkinson.
Yeah.
I'll go for John Ward.
5 out of 5. Brilliant. That's it. That's the quiz. I think 4 out of 5 because you got the missed out on Wrexham.
Yeah, I remember that.
Very good effort, Steve.
It's too easy, Josh.
I know. I'm going to have to make the questions harder. We had a couple of shockers when we first got guests on. We had 1s and 2s, but I think people have heard about the quiz and they've been swatting up.
Yeah. Checking Wikipedia for an hour before they come on, all right.
Yeah, so the last thing, if it's all right before you go, so Luke sports Burnley, I sport Derby, and Josh Man United. I'd like to sort of get your predictions on the next fixtures, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So, it'll be next week. We've got Bristol City versus Derby.
Okay. Do you want the score?
The score prediction, yeah.
Will you accept double figures?
Against Derby, you can. Well, Josh always bets 6-0 against Derby.
I think. I think is now because I'm around the game. I know loads of people at nearly every club, so it's a difficult one. But if I'm gonna do and try and predict the score or who's gonna win,
the score.
Ooh, okay. Bristol City 3-1.
Cheers for that, Steve. Appreciate it.
Sorry.
So the next one, Burnley versus Crystal Palace.
Crystal Palace 1-0.
Doing all right, actually. Crystal Palace have just come into a good bit of form, haven't they? So, and then the last one, we've got Man United versus West Brom.
Man United 3-1 winners.
3-1 winners.
Like that.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Steve. We massively appreciate you coming on and taking your time out to speak to us. But no, you've been absolute class. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks so much. Great guest. And
It's been nice to have a little giggle and reminisce.
Yeah.
That's what we need at this time, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
No problem. Cheers, fellas.
Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
bye-bye.
What a great guy Steve Guinan is, and the work he's doing now with his coaching is absolutely brilliant. But right, let's get straight into our score predictions for this weekend. Luke, starting with you, be very gentle. Bristol City versus Derby.
1-0 Derby.
I'm just going to leave it there. Josh, Bristol City versus Derby.
Well, you've finally done what needed to be done about 6 weeks ago, and that useless ball bag has gone. Depending on whether you get someone good or another useless ball bag will define the rest of your season. I think you will have a bit of a bounce. Your players looked to be in a proper slump, so I think they will be happy he's gone. I'm not. How are Bristol doing?
They're not doing bad. Chris Martin's doing all right.
Oh, God. No, I think you'll get a reaction though. I think you will draw 1-1.
Yeah, I think it will be a 1-0 Bristol City win.
Oh.
I think we've done the right thing getting rid of Koku, but I think it'll not change until we get a permanent manager in. Rumour has it that we're getting taken over by, is it Abu Dhabi, whatever, nephew or someone who's got loads of money anyway. And there's rumours of like Rafa Benitez, bloody Eddie Howe, all circling who's going to come. But for me, I'd love to see Paul Cook take job. He's done an absolute fantastic job with Chesterfield, Portsmouth, Wigan, where he's been. And I think he's someone who's going to kick some guys into shape and sort of battle it out. So
yeah, I'd agree with it. I think he'd do a good job.
Next manager's odds, right? Certainly won't be Benitez, because bookies aren't wrong, and he's not even in the top 50. Rooney is 4-1 on. Right, he might be great, but if you appoint him on a 3-year deal and he does shit, you are relegated.
yeah,
And he can stuff a takeover up your arsehole if you're in League One. John Terry 3-1. Likewise, I won't go near him. I really wouldn't. Eddie Howe. Interesting. He's been out of work.
good at Bournemouth, did shit at Burnley.
He was shit at Burnley. He was shit at Burnley, but you can't say anything. You know what I mean? After how well he done at Bournemouth,
Well, I don't know. I'd take him.
Cook is 12-1.
I think he'd be a great appointment. I really do.
Who? Paul Cook.
Yeah.
I do, because he's never been at a bigger club.
No.
Wigan's his biggest, and he did really well there for first season and whatnot. But it just, like what we were last year, just hindered so much by the financial side, and sadly they went down.
The favourite is Rooney by a mile with John Gregory. What a throwback as assistant.
Fucking hell. He was crap.
He was Villa manager like 25 years ago, wasn't he?
I'm sure in 2003, I believe it were, and I'm sure he won like 12 games out of 54. Oh, great! Yeah, can't wait for that.
Warren Barton was his first signing at Derby. And
Really?
If you want to know more about Warren Barton, last week's video.
But nothing about his relationship with John Gregory, sadly. We'll have to get him back on for that.
No, but it'll be interesting over the coming weeks. I don't know if Mel will be the one to appoint someone new, or apparently this new financial takeover is supposed to be done by end of month. So we'll see where that takes us to. So
yeah.
So Burnley versus Crystal Palace, Luke.
Ooh. No, Palace have done really well.
Yeah.
But I've got to believe that's a game that we would take points off normally with a full strength team, which we have bar Jack Cork. So I'm going to say 1-0.
Josh?
I think it's a big game, this, for Burnley. They really need to start winning. But Palace have been really good. They're like 4-1 against Leeds or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Leeds are very suiting to their defending is very suited to Palace's attack in terms of they just keep throwing people forward, and Palace love to counter. Burnley won't give them that. They'll sit deep. Palace might struggle to create. So I'll go 0-0.
I'm going to give them a 1-1, but I'd love to see Burnley win. Because I know how much Luke hates Roy Hodgson.
I don't hate Roy Hodgson.
Absolutely despises him.
Yeah. I just think, at the end of the day, I hope he stays there until he dies, because the minute he's gone, they'll take Sean Dyche.
Yeah.
Steve Parish is a big fan, but fair play to him. Is at an age where, most people are wetting themselves and going senile, and he's signing Eberici Eze.
Most people are shielding at his age.
I'm not mean to be so abusive. He's a fine gentleman, I think.
Right, last fixture is Man United versus West Brom. Josh, should you be tanking this team or what?
Yeah, they're absolutely shit. 3-0 United, and if we don't win, then all the pressure is straight back on, and that win against Everton will be sort of pointless. You've got to follow up good wins like that against crap teams like West Brom. And I'm not going to apologise for that. They are crap. They shouldn't be at this level.
Luke?
Yeah, I mean, clearly United win. 4-0.
4-0, going big out. Yeah, I've got the draw against Chelsea in back of my head, so I think it will be a 3-2 Man United. I do think they'll probably put 2 against you, because I think... Well, De Gea's not been bad, actually, this year, has he?
This year, the competition with Henderson is almost back to his best.
Yeah, but sadly, defence is shit. So 3-2 Man United. And that concludes this week's Pint. We will see you next week when we speak with Charlie Raglan, another ex-Town player currently playing for Cheltenham. We'll see you then.
Pie and a pint. 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 Pie and a